contrast sensitivity is probably one of the most important functional aspect when it comes to vision, because properly functioning contrast is crucial for everyday activities you do. It has been well described that in AMD, contrast sensitivity diminishes, and this worsens with disease progression. So more severe age-related macular degeneration is usually associated with worse contrast. And this impairment leads to difficulty in recognizing objects, leads to impaired mobility. People cannot drive as efficiently. And this results in worsening in the quality of life. And so we think that contrast sensitivity is a great visual function test, because it allows us an effective approach to capture all these changes. So we are using a VR headset because it is very unique in terms of using it as a device paradigm for measuring visual function. So what we're measuring here is called a radial sweep for measuring contrast sensitivity. So imagine it this way. Instead of the patient having to respond, if you've gone to an optometrist or an ophthalmologist clinic, you have seen and read charts, right? And instead of having the patient respond to a letter or clicking a button when you read a letter, when you see a letter, we are using a surrogate by using our gaze. And so instead of reading letters or pressing a button, we are basically tracking your gaze so that we can evaluate a response and whether we can see the contrast stimuli. So as you can imagine, conventional chart-based tests for contrast sensitivity measurements are quite time-consuming, and they required the subjective input of the patient. And this takes longer times if you are an older individual. And so the way we are approaching it is that we're making the test objective and not having the patient respond subjectively, and we are making a test that's quick and easy to do. As you can imagine, this is a very early stage study, but the results that we have are very, very encouraging. We found that the test is feasible across a broad range of age groups. So that's a great start. And in our clinical study, we found that the test had the ability to separate normals from disease eyes. And furthermore, we found that there was a trend to differentiate between AMD disease severity groups. Now, in our approach, there are certain advantages. The test has a very small footprint, so it's really easy to scale it up for clinics or trials, and it was easy to do. So right now, the device, and it's still in the development stage, but the data that I presented at ARVO is very encouraging, but it is a cross-sectional study. So it gives you a snapshot in the time of AMD patients and individuals without AMD. So our next goal is to look at it in a longitudinal manner, which means we are going to characterize how the function changes across time and eventually establishing it as a clinical trial outcome. And as we speak, we are actually identifying of ways to improve the headset, and we think that that will lead to a much more robust and validated test. There is no perfect visual function test, which is the reason why it's so difficult to measure. The major challenge of measuring visual function in GA, as you may know, that AMD is a very slow progressing disease. So it's difficult to capture, in a slow progressing disease, it's difficult to capture functional changes. It takes years for a patient to develop visual impairment. At the same time, it's equally difficult to capture that change because of the high variability and the retest of visual function tests being so low. So even then, with the device that we have, we show encouraging results, but we have identified some limitations. For example, because this is an eye tracking based approach, in cases of severe dry eye, for example, the tracking mechanism does not do a great job. And so we are identifying ways to fix these confounding factors. And even in eyes, you may know that in some individuals you have misalignment of the eyes, and that might lead to confounding results. So we have identified a few of these, and we are trying to adapt and have modifications within the framework of our device to mitigate these. Yeah, I think ophthalmology is a great place to innovate. The eye is such an important sensory organ. About 80% of the world we experience comes from vision. And ophthalmology is a great place. We are working on AMD, which is a very important public health issue. As you know, that 85% of AMD is dry AMD. So it's very important that we find a way to address some of the issues of AMD in the framework of looking at visual function. At the end of the day, we want to quantify these changes. It doesn't matter what drug we give or whatever intervention we give. At the end of the day, what matters is the patient and how much the patient is improving and whether it's a perceivable benefit. So I think all these innovations, and VR is just one of them. Virtual reality, as you know, is quite popular in the media right now. But it's unique because it gives us a lot of control of the environment that we are projecting the patient. And when you're designing clinical tests, it's a very robust platform for us to selectively and very accurately measure the changes in a spatial manner.